What if the most unforgettable love stories are the ones that never truly end? Long after the final episode faded to black and the theme music stopped playing, one love story refused to loosen its grip on millions of hearts. It lived on in rewatches, in late-night edits, in quiet moments when a single scene could reopen emotions thought long healed. The Meteor Garden love story of Shen Yue and Wang did not simply conclude. It lingered, and years later, it still breaks hearts. Meteor Garden was never meant to be just another remake. When it premiered, expectations were cautious, almost skeptical. The original story had already shaped generations. Yet from the very first episode, something unexpected happened. The screen chemistry between Shen Yue and Wang transformed a familiar narrative into something raw, youthful, and painfully sincere. If you're still listening, help me prove something wrong. They said stories like this wouldn't matter, that love like this wouldn't reach far. But every Kdrama love story deserves to be told, remembered, and felt. If this story touched your heart, stay with this channel, and let's keep these stories alive together. Shen Yue stepped into the role of Shancai with a softness that concealed steel. She was not loud in her defiance. She was quiet, resilient, and emotionally exposed. Wang, as Ming carried a storm behind his eyes. Arrogance wrapped around vulnerability, anger masking loneliness. Separately, they were compelling. Together, they were devastating. Their love story was built on collision. Every argument felt personal. Every reconciliation felt earned. There was no instant perfection, only friction that slowly carved space for trust. Viewers did not just watch them fall in love. They endured it with them. The misunderstandings, the pride, the tears that fell in silence when words failed. And then there were the moments that hurt the most. The pauses before confessions. The times they stood inches apart, emotions screaming louder than dialogue. The scenes where love was present but timing was cruel. Meteor Garden understood something rare. That heartbreak is not always loud. Sometimes it is a look held for 1 second too long. A hand that never quite reaches out. As the series unfolded, Shen Yue and Wang did more than portray characters. They embodied a generation of love defined by struggle and growth. Their relationship was messy, imperfect, and deeply human. That is why it resonated. Because it reflected something real. Off-screen, the impact only deepened. Behind the cameras, their dynamic became a subject of fascination. Interviews captured glances that felt unscripted. Laughter that lingered too long. A comfort that did not appear manufactured. Fans began to blur the line between fiction and reality, not out of delusion, but because the emotional truth felt undeniable. The world watched them rise together. Meteor Garden propelled both Shen Yue and Wang into global recognition. With fame came distance. Separate schedules. Separate projects. Separate paths that slowly drifted apart in public view. Yet the bond formed on screen never fully dissolved in the hearts of fans. Because some love stories imprint themselves too deeply to fade. Years passed, but the question remained. Why does it still hurt? Perhaps because Meteor Garden did not promise forever. It promised honesty. It showed love as something fragile and hard-won. Something that could survive storms but not without scars. And in doing so, it mirrored the love stories people carry in their own lives. The ones that shape them, even after they end. Every reunion clip, every shared photo from the past, every mention of their names in the same sentence reignites the ache. Not because people expect a fairy tale ending, but because they remember how it felt the first time. To believe. To hope. To ache alongside characters who felt alive. Shen Yue moved on, choosing roles that reflected maturity and emotional depth. Wang evolved, shedding his boyish image for darker, more complex characters. They grew as people do. But Meteor Garden remains frozen in time. A capsule of youth, longing, and first love. And that is where the heartbreak lives. In knowing that something so intense belonged to a moment that cannot be recreated. The love story still breaks hearts because it reminds us of who we were when we first watched it, of the emotions we felt before life taught us restraint. Before love became cautious. Before endings became expected. Meteor Garden was not just a drama. It was a feeling. A reminder that love can be imperfect and still be profound. That heartbreak can be beautiful. That some stories are meant to stay unfinished in our hearts, because finishing them would make them ordinary. And so, the love story of Shen Yue and Wang endures. Not as a memory, not as a rumor, but as an echo. One that resurfaces every time someone presses play. Every time a familiar line is spoken. Every time two names are mentioned together and time briefly folds in on itself. Because some love stories do not end. They simply live on. Quietly. Painfully. Forever. And even now, the echo has not grown quieter. If anything, it has learned how to wait. Years after Meteor Garden first captured the world, the story continues to resurface in unexpected ways. Not through sequels or official reunions, but through memory. Through the way fans return to certain scenes when the world feels heavy. Through the way a single musical note can reopen an entire chapter of emotion. Because Meteor Garden was not just about love found. It was about love tested. The brilliance of Shen Yue and Wang's portrayal lay in restraint. In the moments when nothing happened outwardly, yet everything shifted inward. When Ming learned to soften without losing his fire. When Shancai learned to stand firm without hardening her heart. Their growth was gradual, almost imperceptible, and that realism is what made the pain linger long after the screen went dark. There was no perfect victory. Even when they stood together, happiness felt fragile. As if the story itself understood that youth does not grant immunity from loss. That love, no matter how sincere, must wrestle with pride, fear, and circumstance. And perhaps that is why it still breaks hearts. Because Meteor Garden never pretended love was enough on its own. Behind the drama, the world kept turning. Shen Yue and Wang carried the weight of sudden fame with quiet grace. Interviews became more measured. Interactions more cautious. The ease of their early days slowly replaced by professionalism. Not coldness, but distance. The kind that grows naturally when life pulls people in different directions. Fans noticed. Not in a scandal-driven way, but in a mournful one. As if watching two people step away from a shared chapter neither wanted to close, yet both understood had reached its end. Still, moments slipped through. A smile when one name was mentioned. A pause before answering a familiar question. A look that suggested memory had not faded, only learned where to rest. These fragments became sacred. They were not proof of anything tangible. They did not need to be. They were proof of impact. Proof that something real had existed, even if only within the boundaries of a story told on screen. Meteor Garden became more than a drama. It became the reference point. For first love. For heartbreak that teaches rather than destroys. For the quiet understanding that some connections shape us precisely because they do not last forever. And in this way, Shen Yue and Wang became symbols. Not of romance fulfilled, but of romance remembered. Of the kind of love that arrives once, leaves its mark, and never fully explains itself. Time has a way of softening edges, but it does not erase meaning. Every new generation that discovers Meteor Garden experiences the same ache, the same hope, the same slow realization that this story will not let them go easily. And those who watched it from the beginning carry an added weight. The knowledge that they, too, have changed since that first viewing. The heartbreak is layered. It is the heartbreak of the characters. The heartbreak of the actors growing beyond the roles that introduced them. The heartbreak of the audience realizing that moments they once lived inside are now memories. Yet within that heartbreak lies something gentle. Gratitude. Gratitude that a story existed that could feel this deeply. That two performances could resonate across cultures and years. That a single drama could remind millions of people that love does not need permanence to be meaningful. And so the Meteor Garden love story endures. Not because it promises reunion, not because it feeds illusion, but because it tells the truth. That some loves arrive like a storm, that they change us, that they leave, and that even after they are gone, Their echo can still make the heart ache, softly, beautifully, every time it remembers.